Welcome back for another video. Today, we're going to be talking about NFC South draft grades. We're going to be finishing up our draft grades today, and we're going to be starting this with the New Orleans Saints, whose needs coming into this draft were wide receiver, defensive end, interior defensive line, and cornerback. Now, this is a team that has a lot of holes to fill on the defensive side of the football. You know, they've been in cap hell for a little while, having to figure some stuff out. They've had to let some high-end talent go over the last couple of years through free agency, and they have to continue to try to rebuild. And they start by trying to do that in these first two rounds by taking, with the 29th overall pick, they took interior defensive lineman Brian Brees coming out of Clemson. That's a good pickup, somebody that they can slot in right away. It's a hole that they needed to fill after losing guys in free agency this offseason. So I think that's a good pickup for them. He's a solid football player. And the second round, they go defensive end. Again, exactly what they needed to do, getting Isaiah Foskey coming out of Notre Dame. You know, again, another solid pickup. They'll have to develop him and hope that he comes around with somebody to replace Marcus Davenport. You know, so you look at these first two picks, you know, they go for needs. I think they do well with that. You know, they have a lot of potential, but they're rough around the edges. They're definitely going to have to be broken in. They're going to have to be mentored a little bit to be really solid football players. But I feel like in New Orleans, they do a really good job of developing defensive linemen. So I think they'll be fine on that front. It just may not be amazing right away for Saints fans. Now, what I didn't like was that it didn't really make sense for them to take a running back in the third or a quarterback in the fourth. I don't really understand either of those picks. You just signed Derek Carr to a 4-year deal. Like, what are you doing drafting a quarterback? I don't know. You could have drafted a quarterback next year, the year after. Like, I don't know why you're taking a quarterback now. You could have went. I thought the fourth round would have been perfect for the Saints to take a tight end. Go get another weapon for your quarterback, right? Like, you waited until the sixth round to get a wide receiver, which is understandable. This wasn't a wide receiver heavy draft, but it was a tight end heavy draft. You didn't draft a single tight end, but you drafted a running back and a quarterback. Like, what are we doing? You have Alvin Kamara. You just signed Jamal Williams. Like, I don't understand what they were doing here in these middle rounds. Could have gotten so much more value with guys that were on the board at those times. So I don't like what they did there. I know in the fifth round they went and got a safety to fill a hole. That's cool. You got a tackle to compete for a starting job. That's cool. But what they didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. They came in this draft with 8 picks, leave with 7. So between not really getting high-end talent, between doing some shit that didn't really make sense, I gave the Saints a draft grade of C-, which I believe I'm pretty fair to most teams, especially, and I'm pretty partial to the Saints, even though they beat the Colts in the Super Bowl. I've always liked the Saints, so I'm usually pretty biased to them. But I think C- is the worst grade. I think this is the worst grade I gave anybody, was a C-. So I didn't like this draft. I think they really fumbled this one away. We'll talk more about the Saints later this offseason, but I think the Dennis Allen regime, or the Dennis Allen era for New Orleans, is coming to an end pretty soon. Talking about another regime probably coming to an end soon. We're going to talk about the Buccaneers and talk about what they did in this draft. Now, their team needs coming in my opinion, were quarterback, defensive end, defensive back, wide receiver, and offensive line. Now, in this draft, they went heavy on defense. 6 of their 9 picks were on defense. Exactly what they needed to do. They need to start rebuilding that defense. They've lost a lot of guys in free agency over the last couple of years. When you have success, you can't pay everybody. They're running into that issue. So they need to rebuild a lot of this defense. And they took advantage of that with 4 of their first 5 picks being on the defensive side of the football. They started with pick 19 in the first round, Kalijah Kancey, coming out of Pittsburgh, a guy that a lot of people say could be the next Aaron Donald. And, of course, getting those comparisons because he's coming out of Pitt and he's an interior defensive lineman. But he's a powerhouse, dude. He's a freak of nature. I think this is a really good pick. You pair him with Vita Vea, like the interior of that defensive line. They're going to be able to stop the run forever in Tampa Bay. So I think that's a really good pickup. But he's also an interior defensive lineman that can rush the passer, which isn't really something Vita Vea is known for. He's a run stopper, and he can get to the passer when he can overpower guys in one-on-one situations. But having Kalijah Kancey here, they're going to, if they try to double team Vita Vea because he's such a powerhouse, Kalijah Cansey has enough power rush moves from the interior spot to be able to rush. So this is a really effective pick for them. I think it's going to be really good for them. Second round was their offensive pick in the first 5 picks. They go offensive tackle Cody Mock coming out of North Dakota State. This is a guy that I think is going to be really good in the NFL and a really good pickup. That left tackle spot for them is kind of up for grabs. They need somebody to fill that spot with what they had last year was really bad last year. So hopefully they got a guy that can fill that spot and be really good. And I think this is a guy and Cody Mock that has the potential to be very good in the NFL. So I think that's a good pick. But again, talking about these guys, the 4 of the first 5 picks being defense, they go edge rusher in the 3rd round. They go 5th round, Servassier Dennis coming out of Pittsburgh, linebacker, a guy that I think can be really good for them. Then in the 6th round, cornerback. Now in the 5th round, they go get tight end Payne Durham coming out of Purdue. It's a guy that in a tight end deep draft, I think he can be really good for them in the future. You know, he comes into a situation where he could be a star immediately. Like they need a tight end to be effective. He could be a guy immediately. We'll have to see what he's able to do with Baker Mayfield as his quarterback. But then they finish up going defense again with a defensive end out of Eastern Michigan and a cornerback out of Kentucky. So I like what they were able to do in this draft, refilling the defense. But the real question is, have the Bucs, should they have gone after Hendon Hooker or Will Levis? In my opinion, I think they probably should have. You know, maybe you look at that 3rd round pick instead of getting Yaya Diaby. Maybe you should have went and got Hendon Hooker. I think that would have been a good time to draft Hendon Hooker. But they end up with who they end up with. For me, the Bucs get a draft grade of B+. Could have been better. Would have been a lot better if they drafted Hendon Hooker. But they go and get a lot of defense in this draft. And I think they got some pretty solid guys for the future. So they get a B+ from me for the 2023 draft. Moving on to the Panthers, who have had an amazing offseason. Their team needs coming in were quarterback, wide receiver, interior offensive line, and linebacker. They end up filling the biggest hole of them all with Bryce Young. You know, and then they fill their other big need at wide receiver, getting Jonathan Mingo with their 2nd pick in the 2nd round at 39 overall. So, you know, they get the quarterback of the future. They get him another weapon, start filling things out. So you can't be mad at what they were able to do there. Now, they came in this draft with 6 picks. They leave with 5 players picked. So not a whole lot of draft capital to do a whole lot. But getting the quarterback of the future is the most important thing. That's really all they cared about in this draft. You know, they get another defensive end. They get a guard in the 4th round. They end up getting a safety in the 5th. This is a team that has a really good defense already. So you would expect getting a quarterback, pretty good quarterback, hoping Jonathan Mingo can come in and replace at least some of that production that DJ Moore leaves behind. DJ Moore is a really good receiver. So we'll have to see what Mingo does coming in. So this team probably going to be rough around the edges on the offensive side of the ball at first. You wouldn't expect it to be pretty, but I think this team has a chance to be dangerous if Bryce Young can develop into what everybody thinks he can develop into. And obviously, if he can stay healthy, we'll have to see what Frank Reich can do. Can he change his offense enough to make it effective? His offense became less and less effective every year in Indianapolis. We'll have to see what he's able to do in Carolina. So will Bryce Young be able to lift the Panthers to prominence in the NFC? Right now, it seems like there's a pretty clear path to the Panthers being able to win the NFC South. So that plays in their favor. But I don't think they'll be competing for the NFC East right away. They still have, in my opinion, a little bit of a building that has to go on there. They won't be dangerous enough on offense to really be able to win a whole lot, in my opinion. But for me, again, they get a draft grade of a B for the 2023 NFL Draft. For the Falcons, their needs coming into the draft were offensive line, wide receiver, defensive end, and linebacker. The big splash they made in this draft was drafting running back Bijan Robinson coming out of Texas with the number 8 overall pick. He is a stud, okay? And people are saying, oh, yeah, he's overdrafted and blah, blah, blah. He's a running back. Just watch Bijan Robinson play football. He's so incredible. He can do everything, like everything. He can run the ball. He can catch passes. He can run routes. And he can contort his body to make catches. Like everything that they get from Cordell Patterson, they can get from Bijan Robinson, but he's more explosive. Why? Because he's younger and he's going to be more durable. Now, having Cordell Patterson on the roster still is going to be really nice. Having Tyler Algier there, 1,000-yard rusher in his rookie season, is going to be really nice. This is a team that averaged the most yards per rush in the NFL last year. You know, the Falcons, yes, you might not have known that. The Falcons are very good running the ball. Arthur Smith's offense, whether it's in Tennessee or Atlanta, it hasn't mattered. It's been very good. So Bijan Robinson was an amazing pickup for them. I think he makes this offense much more dangerous when you look at what they have around him. Now, if you've been watching us for any amount of time, you know I've been talking about how the Falcons need to rebuild that defense. That defense has been dog shit for years, and they were able to start rebuilding it in the later rounds. It didn't have a whole lot of draft picks, 7 draft picks coming in the draft. They end up with 6 players picked. In the second round, they get an offensive tackle, but in the third and fourth, they get edge rusher Zach Harrison out of Ohio State and cornerback Clark Phillips III out of Utah. 2 guys that I think going to be able to make an impact for them and fill in some depth for them immediately. In the 7th round, they go safety and offensive guard coming out of South Carolina. So they're able to fill some holes. I think what they were able to do, I think Bijan Robinson holds this draft up for them. Like the need that he fills and what he's going to be able to do from them. Because you got to think, drafting Bijan Robinson, you can put either him or Cordell Patterson, which Cordell Patterson is a natural receiver who slots into running back. But Bijan Robinson and Cordell Patterson kind of fit the same mold. You can put either of them in that wide receiver position or have them at running back. So having that versatility and having that flexibility is huge for them. That was a huge draft pick. And then again, filling holes on the defensive side was a good thing. It wasn't the most stellar draft, but it was a pretty damn good draft for me, in my opinion. So I think the Falcons get a B+ grade for the 2023 NFL draft. I would love to know how you would grade each of these NFC South drafts. You let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to keep coming back for more off-season content every day, and we'll see you for the next video.